Well, look at this. Surprisingly peaceful out here for the middle of summer vacation.
Maybe it's because it's unusually humid out here and already 90 degrees and climbing.
But things are looking pretty good out here space-wise.
And that's why, even though it's a bit warm,
we're back at Disneyland.
See, summer crowds, schmummer crowds.
This past month has been so crazy. I've been in courtrooms, I've been in San Diego Comic-Con.
But I've also had to spend a lot of time indoors working on some future projects, none of which are quite ready yet.
But suffice to say, they involve Disneyland history, and I have been combing through all kinds of crazy old photographs, restoring some of them, and thanks to donations from viewers like you, I've basically been time traveling in Disneyland every day, even while I'm at the house.
Did you see that? That was amazing.
Shannon P. sent in that old home footage from the 1960s, and it's crazy to think that here 50 or 60 years later, you can still see the same scene.
Except, of course, those vintage passenger train cars. Those have been gone since the 1970s.
Now, vintage home movies of Disneyland, those are pretty rare, but vintage photos, that's another story. Look at this photo here from 1963, showing that old Disneyland newsstand to the left. As you can see, that structure there has changed quite a bit from the 1960s until its modern form.
The types of merchandise have changed too.
The modern day merchandise includes a lot of mini ears, a lot of magnets and keychains, and a lot of pin lanyards that wouldn't have been there in the 60s. If you look at the old photo carefully, you can see a lot of books for sale. There's some vintage slides, souvenir slides for sale there. You can see they have Kodak film for sale, official guidebooks for only 25 cents. Oh, I'd love to have one of those. And gigantic souvenir maps, only 50 cents.
I saw a bunch of those at Comic-Con from the era and different booths for sale for like $40 or $50. That is some inflation.
See, what I love about time traveling with those old photos isn't just the then and now.
It isn't just the main focus of the picture, but all the little details like that. Another detail that I almost missed myself
is that if you switch from the modern view to the 1963 view, you'll notice something is missing above that tunnel. There's no plaque. That is bizarre. I am so used to seeing these plaques with the words of Walt Disney on them
that I just sort of assumed they were always there.
See, I love spotting details like that. That is what leads me to learn more about this place. Other than that, it's crazy how little things have changed. I mean, here's the Fred Gurley rolling into the station today. And here's the Fred Gurley rolling into the station in August 1963. Here's another view from August 1963 that's virtually identical to the way it looks today. I mean, other than Mickey changing shape just a little bit and the Santa Fe sponsorship sign not being on the station anymore.
If you were transported from 1963 to the modern day right here, this would be instantly recognizable. However, this would not.
Not only were there different turnstiles and ticket booths, but if you were to look this way back in the 1960s,
all that out there would have been parking lot. I remember when this was all parking lot as far as the eye could see.
Old man Disney owned all of this.
Had all these crazy ideas about breeding fun.
I actually don't have many photos of that old parking lot, but if you look at this picture, also from 1963, you can see not only part of that old parking lot, but if you look carefully past the old exit turnstiles,
out where the picnic area is today, you can see the old bus station.
Things look so completely different now that a photo from the same angle today looks almost unrecognizable. As you can see, the modern exit turnstile in roughly the same location is a little bit different than that old school one. And where in the 60s they were apparently using chain link fences still as part of the entrance, today they've got this much more hefty, much more solid iron fencing.
Keeps people from sneaking in to steal Mickey's cheese.
It's also interesting that the new seating arrangement out here
is brick, so it looks more old-fashioned
than the 1963 picture with those benches out there. Pretty darn interesting how much things can change, huh?
All the stuff that's changed inside the park over the years has been very well documented.
But it's rare to hear people talking about the changes that have occurred outside the park.
I loved that old parking lot. Continually fascinated by all the old vintage motels that were around here, the old parking lot, the old signs.
If any of you have pictures of those things, feel free to send them in.
Like I said, I don't have many of the old parking lot
or of the old turnstiles or ticket booths.
Although down below I've linked a video where I visited some of the old ticket booths that they removed, but that's another story.
Anyway, I don't have too many pictures outside of the park, but you see right here to the right,
this today is where the modern stroller shop is.
Get your stroller, get get your wheelchair, your electric convenience vehicle.
Obviously, a lot of people use this little side building here.
Especially in the morning when they're getting all set up for the day with the wheelchairs, or especially the strollers, you know.
But what not many people realize today is that wedged
between the stroller building and the electric convenience vehicle building over there is the Disneyland Kennel Club, a place where you can park your pets for the day.
Makes sense, right? A lot of people need to bring Rover or Snoopy along on their family vacation.
So the Kennel Club is a nice air-conditioned place for them to relax while you enjoy the park.
It always surprises me how few people know that this is back here.
Although I guess it sort of makes sense considering that nowadays it is very much hidden back here in this little crack.
But that was not always the case, as this next photo will prove.
Before these more modern structures covered it up back in 1963, this would have been your view of the Disneyland pet kennels, known back then as Kennel Land, or more specifically, Kennel Land, after the Kennel Rations Company dog food.
Wow, what a transformation. It's hard to believe that that's the same building built in 1958 to be Kennel Land.
Nowadays, we're only seeing the extreme far left door from the original building because it's all covered up by this stuff. But if you look closely at that old picture, those are the exact same two gigantic eucalyptus trees growing in the background, although they've grown quite a lot in 60 years. Back then, boarding your dog here all day, including a Kennel Rations meal, apparently only cost about 25 cents.
60 years later, it's still only about 20 bucks, which is not that bad.
I asked the lady inside how much it cost today, and I also asked if cats were allowed in there. She said yes, cats, pigs, anything. Pigs?
Why would she bring up pigs? How many pigs do they got in there?
Well, I don't know about pigs back in the 1960s, but I was looking closer at that picture I was showing you. And I just now noticed, if you look carefully, you can actually see some happy dogs hanging out in the Kennel Land. That is pretty darn cool, and quite a transformation. It's an impossible view to match up exactly these days because it's being covered by other buildings, but that is a really cool piece of Disneyland history. And it's still back there, just a little more hidden. All right, time to head back inside the park. You know, I am never exaggerating when I say that no matter how many times I step into Disneyland,
I just feel like I'm coming home, you know? I feel that magic still.
What an amazing place. Just think of all the people that this place has made happy. Think of all the millions of children
who have enjoyed meeting their favorite Disney characters here.
Now, speaking of 1963, I don't know if you guys remember,
but the other day on Disneyland's 63rd anniversary,
I was talking about how the Opera House, before the addition of Mr. Lincoln,
used to serve as the Mickey Mouse Club headquarters just for a little while, and I showed you this picture of a little girl standing right out here meeting Mickey Mouse.
Now, before that day, I had actually never known
about the Mickey Mouse Club headquarters. That was all new to me.
But since making that video,
a lovely lady by the name of Deborah sent me an email
showing me this. This was her Mickey Mouse Club Disneyland headquarters charter membership certificate. You can look right there. There's her name, Deborah Johnson. That was her maiden name.
And her email says, "Hey there, hi there, ho there."
I was 11 years old when I got this gem. They were given out in the Opera House, where you could also view a display of movie props from Babes in Toyland and meet real Mouseketeers.
That must have been pretty exciting. They were the actual Mouseketeers from the Mickey Mouse Club TV show greeting guests in here. And if you look at her certificate,
you can see it's actually signed by Ginny the Mouseketeer, which I believe must be Ginny Tyler.
Imagine coming in here as a child and getting to see up close props from real Hollywood movies, meeting Mickey Mouse and meeting real-life Disney TV stars.
I mean, the park was less than 10 years old. Nothing like that had ever been done before.
It would have been pretty darn exciting. It's still actually pretty darn exciting in here for people like me,
because they've got all kinds of artifacts on display in here, including that old menu.
And my favorite,
that gigantic model of Disneyland as it appeared on opening day. Oh, I love this. I'm obsessed with opening day Disneyland. You can see it was really just a sketch. A lot of unfinished areas on that map.
All right,
let's head on back out to Main Street.
Remember how I was talking about the Disneyland kennels being sponsored by Kennel brand dog food?
Well, they definitely still have a lot of sponsorships going in the park to this very day.
But just a little less in your face.
Case in point, check out this other old photograph from 1963. Look at the firehouse back then, and then look at it today. Notice any differences between those two photos? One major difference is the building on the right. These are relatively new facades built when they expanded the Emporium here, this gigantic store, long before that was here.
In this corner back in the 60s.
This right here would have been the entrance to the old locker rooms and the old Disneyland Lost and Found
around. And as you may have guessed, it had a sponsor. Look again at that picture of the firehouse.
Take a look all the way down there to your right. Do you see that? That right there is an old truck. And as you can see in this picture from the 1970s, a little later, not just any old truck. This was the Global Van Lines moving truck. It was custom designed and built by Bob Gurr using pieces of old carriages and old automobiles. And this is where it sat, right over here. Kind of amazing.
Because this wall here, this whole building looks nothing like it did back then.
Global Van Lines was not only a Disneyland sponsor, but they also had their corporate headquarters very nearby to Disneyland in Anaheim. So this was one sponsorship that really made sense.
As a matter of fact, from what I understand, they even shipped the Small World ride from Burbank to the New York World's Fair and back to Disneyland when it was installed in here.
Now Bob Gurr, who built this custom miniature truck,
much like the fire truck and all those other Main Street vehicles that he helped design and build,
is a pretty good friend of mine, so I'll have to ask him for the full scoop
on what they built that truck out of. I do happen to know that that truck was auctioned off a long time ago and is in the hands of a private collector.
So even though it's no longer at Disneyland, that truck still exists today.
And it was pretty popular way back then. I mean, imagine, it was one of the first things that you saw on Main Street USA for over a decade. They even sold little small miniature versions of that truck. Been trying to get a hold of one for a while now.
But so far, not too much luck. All right, let's jump back even further, shall we? This is Main Street USA today, looking towards the castle, and this is Main Street USA looking towards the castle in 1957.
Pretty crazy, huh?
Now, for me today, this is a very, very light crowd.
I'm actually really surprised. It must be the heat because we're right in the middle of summer vacation.
But as you can see from the photographic evidence, a lightly crowded day in 2018 is a lot different than a lightly crowded day in 1957.
I'm still collecting the materials to do a much deeper video about all the different stores on Main Street in the 1950s.
But even just a quick look at this one photo shows you some of the old sponsors like Swift for the Market House or Kodak for the old camera store, the original Upjohn Pharmacy Company down there.
Although what I find the most interesting about that old photograph
is how what people who were on the street in 1957 were using the sidewalks. Look how clear the middle of the street is.
And it's not just this one picture.
I've noticed this over and over with pictures from the 1950s and 1960s.
For example,
there's a picture from about this same angle of Town Square, also in 1957. Beautiful thing, huh? With those smaller trees, looks a lot better than it does today. But if you look a little closer, a little farther down the street, you'll notice no one's on the road.
You know, the old timers, such as Bob Gurr and other friends like that of mine who were here in the 50s,
often remark about how clean the park used to be, how well dressed the guests were, and how respectful.
I always thought that was just sort of a generalization, but you look at those pictures from 1957.
And everyone's politely using the sidewalk. Not today, guys. Not today.
Another thing that's different is that in 1957, right here at the foot of Main Street, if you look closely, you will see an old school drinking fountain.
Now, as you can see in the modern view, there is no drinking fountain right there at all.
No doubt some of you are familiar with the fact that at the last second when they were building Disneyland, they had to throw in drinking fountains.
They had to throw in restrooms.
It was chaos, and that must be one of the original chaos, not very well planned out drinking fountains.
Because that fountain would totally ruin this view now.
Another thing you can see if you look very closely
is this well-dressed fella that I call Jimberly. Now Jimberly here, as you may know, is not only handsome, but he is a cigar store Indian. It was very common to have a statue of a Native American out in front of businesses that sold tobacco products back in the 1800s and the early 1900s. Now people have often referred to this guy as Chief Cigar or Chief Stands Alive. Personally, I was always very uncomfortable using those names for this fella right here, so I came up with Jim and then Jimbo and then of course Jimberly. Because why can't his name be Jimberly, huh? Right, Jimbo? Anyway, back in 1957, if you had looked to Jimberly's right, you would have seen a small sign along the walkway here advertising pipes, cigars, and cigarettes. And that's because, like many other statues of his kind, Jimberly used to be standing right in front of the old tobacco store. Nowadays, they no longer sell tobacco products in Disney parks, but if you look over Jimberly's head in 1961, you'll see the sign up there that reads Tobacconist. Gotta go consult your local tobacconist, right? He's like your pharmacist, only he brings you death. That's pretty crazy, huh? That's not the only picture I have of it either. Check out this other shot, taken during a parade the same year in 1961. Look carefully back there. You can totally see the giant sign saying "Fine Tobacco" with a picture of an old smoking pipe up there, and part of the word tobacconist behind this very, scantily clad dancing lady, huh? Whoa. As you can see, not too much has changed buildings-wise. There's still that round window up there, still the double windows on the right, but no more signs advertising tobacco. I guess Disney doesn't want to push things that cause cancer, huh, Kimberly? All right, there's also plenty of changes between the modern view and the old view of the Main Street Theater, which for a long time used to advertise Lon Chaney in The Phantom of the Opera. Also, if you look closely, you can just faintly make out the admission ticket booth in there with Tilly inside. She is still in there, although the sign above her head no longer asks you for a 10-cent A coupon, which, as you can see in that photo there would have been a cast member standing right here to collect that ticket and let you in through the turnstile. I don't know why they wouldn't have just let them use the ticket booth. I mean, I guess that is Tilly's seat, but I suppose she was busy counting tickets back then, just like she is today. All right, I love talking about Main Street now and then and all the differences, but like I said before, I'm working on a much deeper video, still collecting materials, and since there's a parade about to start out here any minute, and I'm really hot, it's probably a pretty good time to get off of Main Street. Oh, it's so hot. Why do I keep picking chocolate milk? It's so delicious, but it's so thick. Man, I cannot wait to dig even deeper into Disneyland history with all of you guys. I'm still sorting through a lot of material that people have sent me, painstakingly preserving some of it in some cases and restoring it. But there's always room for more. We're actually planning out a way to put all this stuff on display. Perhaps some kind of website expansion over at justinscar.com. But first, there's definitely a lot to show you guys in these videos. I'm also going to be working on redoing some of my earlier videos way back when I started this. There were no videos like this on YouTube about the old People Mover, or the old mine train, or especially the old Skyway here. That was one of my favorite early videos, and I worked really hard on it back then. But not only do I now have so much new material to show you guys about that ride, I feel like it's pretty safe to say that in the last 6 or 7 years I've grown as a filmmaker, huh? So it may be time to revisit some of that material, especially since there have been quite a few changes to some of the abandoned remnants of those things. All right, guys, this is where I'm going to cut it short for today. Thanks for wandering around with me and taking in a little Disneyland scenery and history on this very hot summer day. There's still a lot going on for me down here. We got court stuff and we have family vacation time coming up with my kid. But let me assure you, I've been using that time very wisely, because in between these videos, which are a little more spaced out than normal, you may have noticed, we've been doing all kinds of research and preservation and cataloging for future adventures. In some ways, this has been one of the worst summers of my entire life. You know, behind the scenes, a lot of stressful stuff has been going on. But although I can't control my circumstances, I can try to control my reaction to them. So I'm staying positive, looking forward to the future, getting ready for new adventures, so don't jump ship just yet, because we've got a lot more adventures to partake in. Not just out here in Walt Disney's original Magic Kingdom, but also in Random Land. So check out the links down below for sweet t-shirts and hats and how you can support in the Facebook group and all that other stuff. And then you'll have done your duty, just like I have now done mine, which means I can go home and sleep well. Bye-bye. Jimberly mio. Ay Dios mio. Ay caramba. Holy patos. Holy gatos. Holy moly. Great vanilla yogurt.
By the smell of Yoplait. Whoa, put some pants on, lady.
Holy Hames, Batman.
I didn't know things got that wild here in the 60s. You're single, right? Have you seen this? Where can I get some tobacco now? Oh, you'd rather not say?
Whoa, Matushka.
What the heck kind of dancing was that? Oh my goodness, I thought this was a family place.
Look at that. Rich is so buff and cool. Sweet. You will watch more Random Land adventures. You will watch more Random Land adventures. You will watch more Random Land adventures. And then you'll go home and sleep well.
And bark like a chicken. Ugh.